Hey guys, and welcome back. Today I'll be taking a closer look at the latest Bluetooth gizmo / USB dongle / USB DAC of FiiO Electronics, which is called BTR7. So this is their flagship unit. It's slightly bigger to its predecessor BTR5. It's cooler looking as well, and it's a lot more powerful. So it goes for $200 in the US, for 250 euros here in Europe, and I think that it's time to check it out. One of the coolest things about the BTR7 is that it looks like a miniature version of their M17 DAP. Every corner looks pretty much the same. The shape of the buttons is very similar, and most importantly, the case has the same top-notch build quality and sturdy look. You have glass on its front and back and aluminum all around. And for a better protection, they also included a leatherette case, which I believe fits it like a glove and lets you access every single port and button pretty easily. When it comes to controls, I believe that it has a very simple layout. So you have a 3.5mm jack, a 4.4 balanced jack, you have a USB Type-C used for charging and also used as a USB DAC for your smartphone, for your laptop, for your PC. On the right side, you have right here a microphone. So yeah, you can make calls with this one. An on-off button, an OK button, volume buttons, and also a charge switch right here. That will either charge it or not when it's being connected to your smartphone, and I think that's a very smart addition, as I don't like when USB dongles are taking power from my smartphone. As for tech inside it, FiiO went with two ES9219 DAC chips of ESS Technologies, which are also powering their BTR5, which proved to be quite linear, quite detailed sounding. There's an XMOS receiver on board that takes care of the USB input and also of the MQA playback, and yes, it has an MQA renderer inside. There's a newer and higher performance Bluetooth chipset, the QCC5124 from Qualcomm, which supports every possible Bluetooth chipset that you can think of. But the biggest change lies in its headphone amplifier section, because they went right now with achromatic audio amplifier modules of THX, more exactly with THX AAA 20A modules, which are providing almost 2 times the power versus the BTR5. So this one is a lot more powerful. It provides around 320 milliwatts on its balanced output and about 2 times less on its single-ended output. Lastly, you can find some additional features when connecting this one via Bluetooth to your smartphone and then engaging that FiiO Music software. Besides choosing an operation mode, a desirable Bluetooth codec, enabling or disabling its equalizer, you can update it over the air, and you can also enable a boost mode, which will provide more current for desktop headphones at the cost of a lower battery life. You can enable distortion compensation, but in my case BTR7 was already lacking any kind of distortion, so I personally didn't use that feature. This is all you need to know about it, and it's time to check how it actually performs. Sound-wise, right off the bat, I felt that BTR7 is more impactful sounding versus all other BTR devices of FiiO that I tried before, but after engaging its boost mode, it became even punchier sounding in the bass versus all those devices, just shrinking the gap between a very small Bluetooth gizmo and a really well-made digital audio player. So yes, it sounded more like a mid-level digital audio player, which is actually a big compliment for the BTR7, considering how small and how portable it is. When it comes to tonality, it sounds quite linear, but I also found it quite organic sounding, so it was not clinical, it was not cold sounding. I've used it a lot with the FiiO FH7 IEMs, which are known to be quite extended in the treble, very strong in the treble. And to my surprise, BTR7 didn't make them brighter or harsher sounding in the treble. It was nicely controlling the treble output, and I could listen to a lot of rock and metal, no problem with this combo. So I believe that it sounds quite calm, so not that bright in the treble. When I tried it with the 7 Hz timeless, which planar IEMs, which need a lot more power to awake a nicer bass slam, I was surprised that a minute later I was already smiling, and I've heard just a phenomenal bass output from the 7 Hz timeless. So in my opinion, I believe its bass output is actually the biggest standout of the BTR7. It's more impactful, it's deeper reaching, it's of a higher quality versus BTR5. So I really like its bass output. So in the end, I believe that we're getting a fun sound signature that puts slightly bigger accent on the mid bass, a slightly smaller one on the mid-range, and just leaves that treble output untouched without being bright or tiresome. So that's what I can tell you about the BTR7. Another pleasant surprise was how spacious, how layered, how airy it sounded versus its predecessors BTR5 and BTR3, which sounded more like inside my head, quite bidimensional, quite claustrophobic, but that is not happening with the BTR7, which is more layered, airier, more expanded sounding, and that can be felt not only with IEMs but especially actually with desktop headphones of all sorts. Third and last surprise was how grippy, how tight and how controlled it sounded with all my headphones, with no exceptions, but especially with desktop headphones. And I believe that a better headphone amplifier section is doing all that magic because it provides more voltage, more current, there is less noise, there is less distortion, of course, everything sounds tighter, faster, and that's basically everything you need to know in a nutshell about the BTR7. I remember getting hiccups and just a mediocre Bluetooth transmission with the first generation BTR devices of FiiO, like BTR1, BTR3. I had them in one pocket and my smartphone in the other pocket, and I would still lose that connection, getting some hiccups. That was not that cool. With BTR5, that was already solved, and I believe with BTR7, all those issues are completely solved. So I could leave my smartphone somewhere around here and I could walk around the house, so that wouldn't be really a problem. With two concrete walls, I had a very strong signal up to 4 meters, and in an open space I could go even past 10 meters and it would still get that connection very strong without any kind of hiccups, which is perfectly fine for most situations. Long story short, it seems that FiiO put a much bigger accent on a strong Bluetooth connection, and that makes me extremely happy. And if you're wondering if there is a difference between Bluetooth and USB connection, then yes, sound-wise, there is a small difference in favor of the USB connection. So when I put a 24-bit lossless PCMe file, via wireless it sounded great, I had no complaints. But via USB I've got just defined leading edges, I've got a little bit more information in the treble and in the bass, so it was a little sharper, a little more detailed by 10%, something like that, maybe 15%, but it was still very impressive via wireless. With all that said, be warned that iPhone users will be limited to AAC codec, which is considerably less impressive versus LDAC on Android. Now here comes the interesting part. On the balanced output, high gain with boost mode engaged at 45 out of 60 volume-wise, it was nicely driving a pair of Sennheiser HD800S, which is actually quite a surprise because in the past I believe only Shanling UA5 was able to drive these ones. So these are not so easy to drive, these are high impedance, they need quite a lot of voltage, and it seems that BTR7 can provide that no problem. What's more interesting is that that nasty attitude in the bass that BTR7 is known for was moved into, towards these headphones, and these sounded quite fun, almost on the same level with a medium-sized, medium-level desktop headphone amplifier, and that comes as a huge compliment for the small and affordable BTR7. At a lower volume, at 40 out of 60, it was also driving a pair of Kenneton Rognir, a pair of Odyssey LCD5. It was tightly controlling those drivers. The Soundstage didn't collapse on me, so they sounded quite open, quite airy, exactly as I know them to be. So, it was able to drive even several flagship level headphones, which was actually quite a surprise. So you can carry this one pretty much anywhere and drive plenty of headphones, which came as a huge surprise, especially for me. Even Odyssey LCD4 worked decently, but not exactly great, and you can forget about heavy loads as Abyss or Susvara with this one. Its transient response was also slightly above my expectations, especially after engaging that boost mode. you can feel that there's a higher force always hitting you every single time. There's a smaller difference with IEMs and portable headphones, and a much bigger one with desktop headphones of all sorts. And I believe that's pretty normal behavior. And if you want the fastest transients, the most impactful presentation out of the BTR7, simply use its balanced connection, boost mode, and high gain, and you'll be all set. Now, those ESS Sabre Silicon and those THX AAA modules are known to be ultra fast sounding, and I've covered plenty of such converters and headphone amplifiers, and I believe that BTR7 goes with the same winning formula. So this one is actually quite impressive in here in terms of transient response. BTR7 is faster sounding to any other BTR device. It's much more impactful as well, and if you feel that BTR3 or BTR5 are lacking some grunt or some definition in the bass, then I believe BTR7 will feel like a substantial upgrade, delivering a much snappier and punchier bass performance. Its sound staging capabilities were improved as well, and as long as you'll be using its 4.4mm balancer jack, which by the way is a fully balanced input to output circuit, then you'll be unleashing the maximum soundstage, the biggest scale of the BTR7. So it sounds almost like a well-made digital audio player, not like a high-end one, but like a really well-made mid-level portable digital audio player, which comes as a surprise because it's much cheaper, it's much smaller. So forget about an on-stage presentation, forget about sounding claustrophobic, closed in, up front. That will not happen with the BTR7. On the contrary, it sounds considerably bigger compared to BTR3, to BTR5. So it was not limiting my desktop headphones. The Sennheiser HD800S still sounded like HD800S. Rognir still sounded like Rognir, so LCD5 as well. So in my opinion, pretty amazing soundstage for the size and for the price. Moving on to frequency response, by far the most impressive part of the BTR7 is its bass delivery. So it's slightly elevated, yes, that's for sure. It's slightly deeper reaching, so this is a very impressive type of bass. It's not only deep, impactful, but it's also very controlled, very clean sounding. It actually reminds me about the bass performance of the Shanling UA5, which was very, very similar, very strong in the bass as well. But this one is a little clearer, a little tighter sounding compared to the Shanling UA5. Bass output is quite strong, it will sustain longer bass notes, will provide a lightning quick decay of the notes, just depending on the tracks. This one is actually more impactful, more engaging sounding in the bass compared to the rest of BTR devices, and that's probably a good thing because it's more fun and more engaging sounding compared to those. Mid-range is mostly linear, but there is still a small pinch of naturalness. So I never found it lifeless, boring, or thin sounding in the mid-range. I believe that FiiO nicely balanced that frequency response for a fun and engaging sound signature, putting just a bigger accent on the mid-bass followed by mid-range. So it's still quite fun sounding in here. So it still has those THX achromatic audio modules and ESS Sabre Silicon, but I never found it lacking oomph or weight in the mid-range. It still preserves the soul of the music in the mid-range. Trebles were clean, defined, and very extended, and that shouldn't come as a surprise considering what chips are sitting inside, but it was never tiresome or bright sounding in the long run. It's still a very technical sounding unit in the treble, but it never felt as an act of self-punishment when trying some rock or metal tunes, treble intensive tracks on this one. So I believe that it has just the right treble performance. And if you like your trebles clean, detailed, yet harsh-free, then this gizmo is definitely for you. In a nutshell, it seems that FiiO addressed a mediocre Bluetooth connection of the former BTR devices. It's much more powerful right now. It could drive even flagship material, planar magnetic headphones or high impedance dynamic headphones as Sennheiser HD800S. It's much tighter, it's much more controlled, it's faster, it's punchier in the bass. It lacks any form of noise or distortion, making it a fun sounding little gizmo at the end of the day. It's only by $70 more expensive to the BTR5, And I truly believe that it's worth every single penny because it's a marvelous piece of engineering and it truly deserves my highest gold award. It's really that good. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed my review. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And as usual, listen to my tunes, be positive, and I'll see you soon. Cheers!